Well, hello to my Sunday school friends. It is really, really nice to see you. I hope that you're doing well. I hope that you're happy, that you're studying hard in school, that you're doing your chores, that you're growing strong, and that you're growing in obedience and wisdom. That's what we're shooting for. Now, we've been going through these stories of the Old Testament for more than 2 years now, almost 3 years, something like that. And we still have another 6 months to go. And I just need to tell you that there's a whole lot of stories that we're not going to get to. That there are a lot of things in there for you to read and study and learn as you grow older. And today, we're just going to tap on 5 of God's prophets. We'll talk about that in a second. And I just want you to have sort of an idea of who these guys were and what they were about, so that later on in your life you can learn more. Now, the 5 prophets, and again we'll get to that in a minute, the 5 prophets are Amos, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, and Zephaniah. All right? These were all prophets of God. Now, what's a prophet? A prophet is a person who listens to God and speaks for God to the people. That God would tap these guys and say, I got something for you to say. I got a place for you to go. Remember, Jonah was a prophet. God tapped him and said, I want you to go to Nineveh. And first Jonah said no way and tried to run away. Right? We've talked about Elijah and Elisha, also prophets of God. Now, we're going to talk much more about Jeremiah, but for today, we're just going to tap these 5 guys: Amos, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, and Zephaniah. And I'm just going to paint you a tiny little picture about who they are, and trust that someday down the road, you will look into them more fully. Of course, we could go deep into each of these. We're already not going to finish this until sometime this fall, more than 3 years of telling these stories. We could have gone deeper, we could have done more, but for today, this is what we've decided to do. So, these prophets, these 5, spent their lives honoring God's commands, doing what God told them to do, where God told them to do it. Mostly they told people to stop doing bad things and to follow God, right? Just like a good pastor does now. And because they were speaking for God, they were able to say, if you continue to be bad, there'll be punishment. And if you turn and follow God and do what you're supposed to do, there'll be blessings, right? So Amos was a shepherd. He also took care of sycamore trees. He was a forester and a shepherd. He was born in Judah, but God sent him to Israel to talk, right? So Judah, remember, is a southern kingdom. He was born in Judah, and God sent him to Israel to talk for God. He spent most of his time outdoors, again, as a shepherd or a forester. Now, we know that he took trips with some of his the product of his labors. He went to Egypt and to Damascus up in Syria, but wherever he went, whatever he did, he never forgot that he was one of God's prophets, and he talked boldly about the sins of the king and of the people. Most of the time he talked about justice, and he wanted the people of God to treat the poor fairly, to not take advantage of the poor, and that was a big deal for Amos. Down in Judah, the prophet Micah was talking about much the same thing. He was really mad. God was really mad about how the poor were being treated by the rich people down in Judah, and Micah just absolutely told it straight. He put it right on the line that there would be punishment if the poor were mistreated. He thought of himself as being connected to the poor and to everyone who suffered. Later on, the prophet Nahum had much the same message up in Nineveh. Isn't it cool that God keeps sending people, prophets, to Nineveh, even though they're not part of Israel? God cares about all God's children. So not just Jonah went to Nineveh, but also the prophet Nahum got sent there. Now, Two more. Zephaniah was a descendant, that means a part of the family of King Hezekiah, right? And he spoke God's word, God's warning, right? God's hopes down in Judah. And he told them that God was going to judge and punish the nation for their evil ways, right? But he also said a time would come when the idolatry, the following false gods, would be overthrown in Jerusalem. He begged the people of Judah to stop sinning so that they wouldn't have to be punished. And he said that God would keep and protect a small group of people, and that these people would trust in the Lord, and the whole world would be blessed through them. So bad times are coming because of your naughtiness. Some small group of you is going to remember to follow God and to trust God, and that group will be blessed and will be a blessing to the whole world. I think we know what that's about, right? That's about Jesus. Okay? And then the last one, Habakkuk. He was one of the temple singers. So he's down in Judah as well, right, in Jerusalem. And he was really, really sad about how wicked the world was. And he looked out over the world and he saw the nation of the Chaldean nation, the Chaldeans, and he saw them getting strong and gobbling up surrounding nations. And he warned the people of Judah that if they didn't stop disobeying God, if they didn't stop being bad, the Chaldeans would gobble them up too. Bet you can guess what happened. Yeah. So those are 5 prophets. You sort of have an idea that the common things that they're talking about is that we should not mistreat the poor. We should treat the poor with justice. That we should walk with people who are suffering. That if we're rich or important, we shouldn't hurt the people around us. That there's blessings for us if we follow God's ways and God's laws. And there's punishments if we don't. None of that should be surprising to you after the 2 years or so we've spent doing these stories, 2.5 years, right? So that's what we're going to do today. Next week, we start talking about Jeremiah. You take care. I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.